Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's webinar. Just a few things to talk about before we get started. If you do have questions, feel free to enter them into the Q&A screen or the chat window, and we will try and address those throughout the webinar today. If we don't get to all of them during the webinar, we will follow up with you afterwards. A copy of the slides will be emailed out to each of you after the seminar today. In addition, we will be recording the session, and the recording will be available on our website on our nonprofit education page, where you can also find all of our other previously recorded webinars. So let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about an Allen County nonprofit update, and this is really going to be kind of a state of the nonprofits in Allen County. And I know that some of you are from outside of Allen County, so don't worry, you will probably learn things from today's webinar as well, because what we are going to talk about, many nonprofits across the state and across the US are, they're all feeling the same types of challenges. So even though the first part of this webinar will be a little bit specific to Allen County, most of what we talk about today is really for all nonprofits. The three main areas we're going to address today are people, funding, and resources. So as we get started, let's just talk a little bit about Allen County. So population of Allen County is just under 400,000. And as you can see, it is growing. And here's a map kind of all of the cities, major cities and towns in Allen County. When we look at the nonprofits, the tax exempt organizations in Allen County, there are about 2,300 of them. Now, unfortunately, we can't get an exact amount. The way that the IRS tracks tax exempt organizations, it's by city as opposed to county. So what I did was went through and pulled a list of the nonprofits for the larger cities and towns in Allen County, and you can see them here listed. So in total, there's about 2,300 tax exempt organizations within Allen County. Of those, 1,972 are the 501c3 organizations. So those are like the charitable, educational, scientific, the common types of nonprofits that most people think about. In total, there's 1.8 million tax exempt organizations registered with the IRS. So that kind of just gives you a little perspective of Allen County compared to the whole United States. And again, here's just a larger breakdown of the different types of tax exempt entities within each of the larger cities in Allen County. Again, a copy of these slides will be provided to everyone after the webinar. And I do have links at the bottom of each of these slides to show where I got this information, so you can certainly go and get some additional information using those links. And again, this just gives you a little bit more detail about those different types of tax exempt organizations, what each of them represents. And again, the 501c3, those are the most common nonprofits that we think about. All right, so that's just a little bit a bit of background on Allen County, but let's start talking about people. So we know everyone is facing staff shortages, whether it be nonprofits, whether it be for-profits. We at DWD, everyone is having difficulty finding staff. And what we're hearing specifically regarding nonprofits, when you do find staff, maybe they don't have the capacity to do the job. There's a lack of required skills, which is not good. But then also there's additional competition with for-profit entities. In the past, maybe we haven't had, I think there's always been some competition with for-profit entities, but I think it's even more so now because those for-profits are also having difficulty finding staff. So everyone is competing for staff. Within a nonprofit organization, a lot of times you have people wearing multiple hats. And so they may come in to be, the CFO, but in addition to doing the accounting, they have to be in charge of the technology. They have to be in charge of grounds and maintenance. They also probably are helping out with programs. And so they are wearing multiple hats. And that could be a challenge when you're trying to get someone into that position. Also, finding someone that has the skills to do all of those responsibilities under that that position. Remote work is a new thing, you know, after the pandemic and the work-life balance, more and more organizations, companies are providing this option for remote work, focusing more on work-life balance. I was talking to someone and, you know, they said that work-life balance, that's great, but no one ever says that they want more work in it. It's always more life. So trying to balance that out. And some nonprofits, you know, the services that you provide, you can't do it remotely. You have to be on site if you're meeting with clients or meeting with different program participants. You can't work remotely. And so those are some of the challenges that we're seeing. So what are some possible solutions? And today I will be, you know, upfront, I do not have the best solution for all of these, but try to give maybe some things that we could think about to try and help solve or at least address some of these issues. Volunteers. And I know we're going to talk about volunteers in a little bit, but, you know, having a volunteer program. So do you currently have a volunteer program in place? And when I'm talking about a volunteer program, I don't mean just, you know, do you have volunteers? Do you actually have a program in place where you have somebody within your organization that is responsible for monitoring, for overseeing the volunteers, making sure that you clearly identify the specific tasks that are going to be delegated to these volunteers? I think the clearer the job description, the easier it is to find people who really want it, who really, you know, care about your organization and are willing to chip in. Making sure that you're supporting staff. So to compete with the for-profit companies, look for ways to help members, to help your team members grow. You know, maybe it's not all about financial stuff. What other non-financial benefits can you provide? Are there ways to support the staff in that manner? For example, maybe you have a staff person that needs to take an hour out of the day because they want to complete an online college class. So you're supporting them by allowing them to do that. Or maybe you can negotiate with a nearby childcare business for a reduced rate for staff. Or even like small things like providing monthly group lunches. Sometimes those little things go a long way, and they also really help the culture of the organization, enticing people to want to work for your organization. Another option might be sharing staff. Or part-time contracted staff. I know a lot of organizations will, for their accounting, not all nonprofits can do this, but some nonprofits will hire a contracted part-time accountant. And I know some of those accountants do provide services for multiple nonprofits. Or is there a way that maybe you can share some other staff within the nonprofit workforce? The key is, I think we really need to be creative, and this is not just a nonprofit issue. This is across the board. All organizations are dealing with this and trying to get additional staff. If you aren't aware of the Northeast Indiana Nonprofit Salary Survey, I would really recommend that you go and look at it. This is a salary that is created every few years. It's done in conjunction with the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne, United Way, Northeast Indiana Partnership and Charitable Advisors team in Indianapolis. And what they do is take a survey, and the last survey for 2022 consisted of 153 nonprofits in Northeast Indiana. And it talks about 16 different position categories within nonprofit organizations. So for organizations that are in Allen County, Fort Wayne area, this is very helpful because it's showing true salaries and benefits that are being paid, not salaries and benefits being paid from some large nonprofit out in Chicago or California. So these are true amounts that you can really utilize within your organization. So if we look at this salary survey, the last time they did it was in 2019. So comparing 2019 to 2022, they discovered that annual salaries are up. For 2022, the average increase was 3.6 for the 80% of organizations that did give raises. So again, you know, this is just kind of some additional information on staffing and salaries and that type of thing that maybe you can use to either keep your staff or to attract new staff. Bonuses. Bonuses were more common, especially those for human social services. They discovered that a lot of nonprofits received the extra funds during the pandemic. A lot of those extra funds could be used for salaries. And so those payments went to reward staff for using funding that probably won't be able to be used ongoing. So they didn't do a salary increase, but instead provided bonuses. And then also they saw that compensation is rising more in larger nonprofits. Consistently seeing that salaries are increasing more for the CEO, COO, and program management roles. They also provided some best practices, and these are maybe some things to think about within your own organization. What is your compensation philosophy? So looking to see within your own organization, do you want to pay at the median range of these area nonprofits, higher or lower? What's going to work for your organization? What impact does that decision have on your staff quality and retention? What additional stressors does your organization face if you do pay less? And then are you really saving money when you pay less? So just some things to think about there with your own compensation philosophy. And then attracting talent, how are you different? Why do people want to come and work for your nonprofit? How does your organization want to be perceived in the community? What do you want employees to be saying about development and learning opportunities? Again, are you providing any kind of support if they want to continue to get an extra degree or, daycare or something like that? What are those extra things that you're doing? Leadership departure, that's a big one. I know within our area and probably most nonprofits around the state, the executive director, the CEO position is nearing retirement. And organizations are realizing that open position cannot be filled with a qualified candidate within the same salary range. So you're already having trouble getting staff, and they're finding it difficult to replace those leaders, especially those longtime leaders. So just making sure that your executive committee, your board is reviewing the executive compensation. Obviously, that's something that should be done every year, according to the IRS, but just making sure that you're reviewing that, and also thinking about succession planning for that person, because obviously you want to have a plan before that actually happens. And this is not all about large nonprofits. Small nonprofits can benefit as well. Looking at what you're paying your people, where you're getting your people at, what is your target compensation range, and how can you get there? Maybe you can't pay that right now this year, but can you put some kind of plan in place to get there in 1 or 2 years? And again, it's more than just money. Are you able to provide some of those non-financial components, like maybe a flexible work schedule, vacation time, working from home, maybe not all the time, but maybe, 1 day a week, or maybe when it's necessary. And then also, have you asked your staff, especially the staff that have stayed, why have they stayed at your organization? Why do they like working there? Advertise that, make sure people are aware of that when you're going to look for new people. I've also included a couple resources. Now, again, these are kind of local to Allen County, but wanted to provide these to you as well. The Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne, they have 2 programs, a Jumpstart and a Certificate in Fundraising Management programs that that nonprofit professionals can participate in. And then Follinger also has 2 programs, the Executive Leader Program and Rising Leader Program, that nonprofit professionals can participate in. So if you're looking for maybe some of those extra benefits that you might be able to provide your staff, these are 2 possibilities that if you haven't participated in them already, you might want to consider looking into. So the other part of people is volunteers. A lot of nonprofits rely on volunteers to do, everyday work or within the organization, or maybe just helping out with a special event. But volunteers are an important piece of the nonprofit environment. Historically, volunteering has been strongest among college graduates, married people, and people with children. However, generations are changing. Many of the younger generations are kind of pushing those life changes back. And so, excuse me, they aren't necessarily volunteering as much as maybe some of the not as young people. Also, the younger generation are much more likely to work several jobs. They usually live in multiple places. They don't necessarily stay in one place as long as some of the older generations. And so this kind of provides some barriers for getting involved. And just being, people are busy. Everyone is busy. And I know that's always an excuse, but I know that that is a challenge for a lot of nonprofits, is finding volunteers, and then also, just how to deal with the changes in generations and how to attract those new generation of volunteers. So again, here's some possible solutions. Again, I don't have all of the answers and I don't profess to, but maybe some things to consider for your organization. Within Fort Wayne, we have a volunteer center. It is a nonprofit here. And what they do is they match up volunteers who want to go and help out nonprofits with those nonprofits that need them. So that might be something to look into. Also, volunteer fairs. I know the volunteer center just recently had one, but other volunteer fairs, social media, using Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever kind of social media your organization is on, utilizing that, putting that out there to attract different volunteers, especially the younger generation that are on those different types of social media. And then also, again, we talked briefly before about a volunteer program. Make sure that you have, again, something that is actually in place that's organized. So when someone does say they want to help you in a volunteer capacity, you have that already lined out. Clearly communicate what skills that you are looking for and what they will be doing. What the commitment is. Is it a reoccurring commitment or is it a one-time thing? So just making sure that you have all of those outlined. I think that just will help you get more volunteers, better volunteers for your organization. So again, talking about the difficulty in finding volunteers, AmeriCorps conducts a survey every 2 years about volunteerism in the United States. And they said that the national rate of volunteering through organizations declined from 2019 to 2021. That's primarily during the pandemic, which isn't uncommon when you think about it, just because of all the limitations that were in place during the pandemic. But also, are we stuck at that lower level, or are we going to get back to the level that we were at prior to the pandemic? So between September 2020 and 2021, their research showed that 23.2% of Americans formally volunteered with organizations. And this is 4.1 billion hours with an economic value of 122.9 billion. So that is a lot of support that our volunteers are providing. However, you can see that the rate dropped. It was 30% and now it's down to 23%. Again, we did have the pandemic in there and that could have some impact on it, but there's also other things that are going on. Again, like we talked about the different generations. Typically, Generation X has had the highest volunteer rates of all those generations. And as they are getting older and new generations are coming in, again, those newer generations, they're not volunteering in the same way that other generations are doing. And so we as a nonprofit looking for volunteers kind of have to reevaluate how we're getting our volunteers, how we're using our volunteers, and that type of thing. I did want to share that the independent sector with Do Good Institute announced in April the latest value of a volunteer. So each year they go through and calculate what a volunteer hour is worth. And so nationally, that is up in 2022, up to to almost $32. And in Indiana, it's almost $29. So that's good to see that the value of the volunteer is going up, even though the total number of volunteers seems to be decreasing. And again, I mentioned the volunteer center, so I put their website down in the corner here. They connect volunteers with local community organizations within the Allen County, Fort Wayne area. However, I'm sure there's other organizations throughout other communities that do similar types of work. All right, let's talk about board members. So this is our last area under people. So we've talked about staff, volunteers. Now let's talk about board members. I know nonprofits are also finding difficulty with getting board members. We prepare a lot of nonprofit 990s, and we see a lot of the same number or same names on multiple 990s that are serving on multiple boards, which is fine. You know, those people like to be involved and support multiple nonprofits, but you know, how many nonprofits can one person be on and actively participate on as a board member and really support the organization? So I think there's maybe some burnout amongst those volunteers that serve as board members because they are being asked to serve on multiple boards at the same time. Also, we know that some boards are having difficulty getting quorum or making sure that their board members are staying active. And again, I think that kind of goes back to the volunteer thing. People are busy. Throughout the pandemic, people have really reevaluated what is important and what to them and where they want to spend their time. And unfortunately, I think that has kind of gone into volunteerism and board member participation with nonprofits. So again, let's talk about maybe some possible solutions. Making sure that your organization has a defined path to board service. So a lot of organizations will invite people to be on committees. And I know that that's just getting more people because you need people to be on committees and the board, but you know, making sure that people understand what the path to board service is, making sure that they're serving in a volunteer capacity, maybe on a committee first, so that it is a good match for both the organization and the individual. You don't want to bring someone in, put them on the board, and then discover that they're really not passionate about the organization, and that's just going to lead to them not being active as a board member. Again, community service, board responsibility agreement. So when you do have board members come on, having them sign an agreement what their responsibilities are. I would recommend on that board agreement that there be a line that says, if I cannot, for some reason, you know, whether it be personal or professional, cannot meet my responsibilities as a board member, that I will resign from the board. There's no use. It's not good for either side to have a board member that is not active, that is not coming to the board meetings. You want to be able to fill that spot with someone that is active, that wants to be there. And then also board training. I think sometimes board training gets overlooked, especially if you have boards that consist of individuals that have served on nonprofits for a long time. However, I think we can all benefit from a refresher on what it means to be a board member and our responsibilities. So I think having some ongoing board training, some type or another, is always beneficial to the board. Again, I wanted to provide some local resources for you. If you are looking for board members, committee members, Greater Fort Wayne Inc. has a Leadership Fort Wayne program. Many of those participants in that program will serve as a board intern. So that's one way to kind of get some people into your organization. Young Leaders of Northeast Indiana, they focus on young professionals within the community. They have a Get on Board program where they train individuals on how to be a board member and then also assist matching those up with nonprofits. And then also, you know, using LinkedIn. A lot of people are on LinkedIn and they will, in their profile, provide what boards they serve on. And they also you can use that to see what type of organizations they've served on before. And then, hey, does that person look like they might be a good fit for our organization? Reach out to them, see who they're connected to. Are they connected to any of your current board members or people that you know? Use those connections to get introduced to them. And then there's also a way on LinkedIn that you can just search for open to joining a board under all filters. So if you haven't tried that yet, it might be something to try and get additional people onto your board. And then again, just board training. I know Follinger Foundation again provides grants to nonprofit board members for unique learning experiences. So if you have some board members that want to attend a conference or do a workshop, reach out to them. And then I just wanted to put our website out there because we do provide a bunch of, our monthly webinars. A lot of those nonprofit board members would benefit from. So I wanted to provide the link to that. Okay, let's talk about funding. And I know this is a huge important area for nonprofits. So over the past couple of years and currently there's been some challenges within funding. There were a lot of additional government grants that were given out during the pandemic. However, some of those have stopped now. So a lot of nonprofits got some extra money, but that money may have stopped or gone away. Many special events were put on hold during the pandemic. So we kind of had to reevaluate how we're going to do those. There's competition with other nonprofits. As we looked at on one of the earlier slides, we noted how many nonprofits were in Allen County. There's a lot, and there's new ones starting up every day. And I know that those new ones are competing for the same funding that you've been getting for many, many years. Government funding, there are certain requirements that have to be met as far as reporting, what kind of documentation you have to do. So those are some additional challenges that go along with the government funding. And then also the economy. If you have large investments or endowment balances, I'm pretty sure those have probably gotten hit in this recently because of the economy. So what can we do about it? Well, we might have to look for some new funding sources. If you've relied on contributions, maybe we need to start charging a fee for some of our services. Maybe we need to start looking to see if we can get some government grants. What kind of additional fundraisers can we do? Again, talking about special events, prior to the pandemic, all the special events were in person. Some nonprofits have gone to virtual fundraising events, and it's really worked out for them. So, you have a virtual event, and then maybe you have some food or wine delivered to the participant's house. We've seen all kinds of things. So just reevaluating where you're getting your resources from and what else, trying to figure out what else is out there. Cooperative grants, are there ways where you and another nonprofit can come together to get a grant? I know some funders like that when nonprofits work together. So are there ways that you can work with other nonprofits to get additional grants? And then this is something that I know a lot of nonprofits are doing. And if you haven't, you might want to, I think you really need to look at this, is reevaluate your program. Are your programs that you should be continuing to do within the organization? Are they making money? Are they needed? And they might be, and what you're doing might be perfectly fine. However, there might be some programs that, this has been a needed program in the past. We've been able to support it, but maybe we can't do that anymore. And you really have to watch out for those programs that are those ones that have been around. We've been doing it forever. That's what we're known for. That's great. But should you continue to do that program just because of that? So I think a lot of boards are having some difficult discussions, or should be having some difficult conversations right now, to really evaluate what kind of programming they are offering in these times where funding sources, it's a challenge for many nonprofits. So this is a list of some local funders. This is by no means all of the local funders. I just wanted to put some out there that are some more common ones. And again, these organizations give grants to nonprofits. Many of them require the nonprofit to fill out a grant form, provide feedback on how they spent the money. I know for some organizations that's a challenge, but you know, as a funder, some of them want to make sure that that money is being spent for what they said it was supposed to be spent for. Some of these funders require audits, and you have to get an audit done. We understand that that's a challenge. So as an organization, when you're evaluating what grants you want to go after, those are some things that you have to think about. Also, there has been some changes in some of the funding recently. For example, the United Way in 2022, they refocused on 4 priorities: educational opportunities, food security, housing stability, and mental health access. The Community Foundation now has 5 pillars: connected community, everyone's economy, lifelong learning, inspiring places, healthy mind and body. So there has been some changes in how funders are giving money, but you know, that's okay, because there are a lot of funders out there, and those certain funders exist to give money to certain types of programming. So I know that's difficult for some nonprofits, because, you know, you've always gotten a grant from XYZ Foundation. You want them to support you, which you do. But if you're looking at from their side, you know, if they take the peanut butter approach and give $5,000 to every single nonprofit in the community, is that making an impact where they want to make an impact? So I guess my point is that there are a lot of local funders out there that provide funding for a lot of different types of programs, and unrestricted. So as a nonprofit, maybe you just need to reconsider who you're getting your money from. And you know, if they're continuing to give you money, that's great. But maybe there are some other funders out there that you haven't asked for money before, and maybe you could consider asking them. So again, just reevaluating where you're getting your funding from. Okay, when we're talking about funding, I wanted to talk about some specific funding that I know a lot of nonprofits in the community are getting. So a lot of you are getting ARPA funding through the city. If you are getting ARPA funding, that is government money. That is government money that has originated from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, coming down through the city of Fort Wayne, and then coming into your nonprofit. If you get this government money, these funds that you get, they would be, you need to consider them in conjunction with a single audit. So if you get a lot of government money, if you spend over $750,000 of federal money during a single year, you may have to get a single audit. So this ARPA funding is federal money. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of it. And I know a lot of you are getting it, because these nonprofits here on the screen are ones that have been approved by the city of Fort Wayne to get ARPA funding. Now, I know some of you are getting smaller amounts, and you will not have to have a single audit, but some of the larger organizations or organizations that get a large amount of federal money, you just need to be aware that this ARPA money is federal money. In addition, new market tax credits, that is government money. The city of Fort Wayne recently received $45 million in new market tax credits. They haven't been given out yet, but they will. But just to let you know that if you do get new market tax credits, that is government money. Again, it's coming from the federal government through the city of Fort Wayne to you as a nonprofit. There is also a lot that goes into these new market tax credits. So if that is something that you are thinking about getting or are going to get for the very first time, you just need to make sure that you understand how this works and all of the requirements that need to be done with that. Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant. This was given out through the U.S. Department of Education and then given out through the state. So this is statewide. So all of you organizations that are not necessarily in Fort Wayne, and that's true of the other grants too. They just came for the city of Fort Wayne, the new market tax credits and ARPA funds, but they may have gone through your city as well, Indianapolis, South Bend. So you might be getting them too. That's just not a Fort Wayne one. Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant. we're seeing a lot of organizations that provide some kind of childcare, educational type programming have been getting the Build, Learn, Grow Stabilization Grant. Again, this is federal money. So if you get this, make sure to see if you need to have a single audit done. And you can see here the different expenses that can be paid for with this grant. And again, here is kind of a graph that shows where all the money from the Build, Learn, Grow grant went. So you can see it went to private schools, licensed family child care, different types of entities across all of Indiana. Another type of funding source, which is not really a grant, but it is money coming in. I wanted to talk briefly about the employee retention credit. Many of you have already gotten this. Some of you maybe are in the process of getting it or haven't gotten it yet. It is a refundable tax credit for businesses that continue to pay employees while shut down during the COVID-19 pandemic or had significant declines in gross receipts from March 2020 to December of 2021. Now, the key is you have to be eligible to get this. There are eligibility requirements that must be met in order to get this. There are a lot of third-party entities out there promoting that they can get you a refund. Just some of them might be valid, but you really need to be aware of these. The IRS has even issued a warning against these types of entities, especially those that are charging some type of upfront fee, or if they're charging a fee that's contingent on how much they get back. So let's say, well, you have to pay us $10,000 up front, or you have to pay us, 15% of what we get from you. Just be aware that those could possibly, I'm not saying all of them, but those could possibly be not legit in that they're just trying to get money for everyone, and they might not truly look at what your eligibility requirements, if you're meeting those eligibility requirements. So I was recently on a website with the AI, or a webinar with the AICPA, and they talked about audits that are starting to be done on these employee retention credits refunds. And so some of the items on the screen here are some of the documentation that they think that they will be requested as part of that audit. So as you can see, making sure that you do have a significant decline in gross receipts, documentation of the employees, documentation of recovery startup business, documentation of eligibility. Just want to make sure that that you do really can get these funds. And a lot of you can't. A lot of nonprofits did experience significant decline in gross receipts or had to close down. So a lot of you, I'm sure, it's fine. But there are some organizations that actually had an increase in revenue. So I want you to just be aware that a lot of organizations are getting these employee retention credits, but just making sure that you are actually properly going through and making sure you are eligible before you get this, because if you get it and you aren't eligible, you will likely have to pay it back. And then finally, I just wanted to provide a few other resources. Again, these are kind of in our community here, but I'm sure that there are other chapters in other communities. The Alliance for Human Services, this is a membership organization committed to improving delivery of human services in the greater Allen County areas in Northeast Indiana. So these are for your CEOs, executive directors that provide direct services to vulnerable populations. So I've provided their website link there if you are not a member and are interested in that, if your organization kind of fits in that area. The Association of Fundraising Professionals here in Fort Wayne promotes ethical fundraising, enhances the community while conducting and educating fundraising professionals. So maybe your fundraising person, your development director, those would be the individuals that would be members of that organization. So if you're not a member of that, you might want to check that out. And I know that there's AFP chapters in other areas as well. And then finally, another one here is the United Way of Allen County. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but a few years ago, the United Way of Allen County did a community needs assessment where they went through and had conversations with a bunch of different people, looked at census topics, and then also community insights, just got a whole bunch of different information about Allen County. And this was all put together on their website. And so you can go access that data. It is a few years old. However, it provides a lot of information about, the childcare, community activities, household income, student loans, jobs and employments, mental health. A lot of this information that was put together, I think could benefit a lot of nonprofits in their programming, when you go to apply for grants, your outcomes, when you're looking to see how you're impacting the community. I think this information would be beneficial to you. So I wasn't sure if people were aware of this link or not, but it is out there for you to access. So you can actually go out there if you'd like to look at that information and use it within your programming or your results, that type of thing. And then also, again, this Allen County is really unique, I think, to have two great supporters of nonprofits, the Community Foundation of Greater Fort Wayne and Follinger. Just wanted to throw that out there too, that if you need a room for your board meetings or for some other type of nonprofit meeting, they both provide space to nonprofits, and you can request a room at their organizations. Both organizations have wonderful space. Follinger just redid their office space. So again, not only do they provide rooms, but both of them provide what we talked about before, support for nonprofit leaders, grant opportunities and those type of things. That's really all I had for today. We just kind of wanted to give a overall feedback of what we're hearing from nonprofits within our community, as well as what we're seeing. The people, whether it be your staff, your volunteers, and your board members, the people are really what drives a nonprofit. Without them, you can't do your job. And so it's very important to make sure you have the proper people in place. And when that's a challenge for you, that really can wreak havoc on the nonprofit. And so we kind of wanted to focus on that and provide maybe some possible things to look at to help in that area. Funding is always huge with nonprofits. And again, with funding, making sure that you're not relying on a single source of revenue, whether it be a single donor or a single grant, because, if that grant goes away or that donor goes away, will you be able to survive as a nonprofit? So, providing some information on that as well. And then also just kind of some resources for your organization. Again, a copy of these slides will be emailed out to everyone, and they do have links with everything. So if you want to look into any of that information in more depth, you'll have that as well. Also wanted to share our previous webinars that we've done so far this year, in addition to the ones coming up. All of them are totally free and open to any nonprofit or anyone related to nonprofits. The recordings are all available on our website for free. You don't have to sign up. You don't have to log in. You don't have to pay for it. You can just go in there and access those as well. But with that, I thank you again for attending today. And just also wanted to remind everyone that if you have a December 31st year end, your 990 is due on May 15th. If you have a June 30 year end and your 990 was extended, it is due May 15th as well. So just making sure that you get those 990s into the IRS as well. So thank you again for attending. If you ever have any questions or have any follow-up, we'd like to hear about things that you want to hear about, how we can help you, feel free to contact any of our team members. Thank you.